There was once upon a time, a king and queen, who had two fine boys. As they increased in size, they became beautiful as the day, so well were they nurtured. The queen never failed to invite the fairies at the birth of her children, and she always begged her visitors to tell her what would happen to them. After a while she had a beautiful little girl who was so pretty that it was impossible to see her without loving her. The queen, having regaled all the fairies who came to see her on the occasion, said to them, as they were about to leave, "Do not forget your usual custom, but tell me what will happen to Rosetta," which was the little princess's name. The fairies told her that they had left their conjuring book at home, and that they would come to see her again, another time. "Ah!" said the queen, "that forebodes no good. You do not wish to afflict me by an unhappy prediction. I pray you however to conceal nothing from me, but tell me all." They tried hard to excuse themselves, but this only made the queen more anxious to know her daughter's destiny. At last the chief fairy said to her, "We fear, madam, that Rosetta will bring a severe misfortune upon her brothers, that they will even be put to death on her account. This is all that we can foretell of this beautiful little girl, and we are very sorry that we have not better news to give you." They then left her, and the queen remained so sorrowful, that the king noticed it. He asked her what was the matter. She replied, that she had gone too near the fire, and had burned all the flax off her distaff. "Is that all?" said the king. He went to his stores, and brought her more flax than she could have spun in 100 years. The queen was still sad, and the king asked her again what was the matter. She told him that as she was walking by the river, she had let one of her green satin slippers fall therein. "Is that all?" said the king. He immediately summoned all the shoemakers in his kingdom, and took the queen 10,000 slippers made of the same material. Still the queen was not consoled, and the king asked her a third time what was the matter. She said that eating too fast she had swallowed her wedding ring. The king knew that she was not telling him the truth, for he had the ring about him, so he said to her, "My dear, you are telling a falsehood. Here is your ring, which I had in my purse." The lady, as may be supposed, was vexed to be caught telling an untruth, for it is the most wicked thing in the world, and she saw that the king was angry, so she told him what the fairies had predicted of the little Rosetta, adding, that if he knew any means of preventing it, he must tell her. The king, much grieved at this, replied, "My dear, I know of no other means of saving our two sons' lives, than putting Rosetta to death, while she is yet, in her cradle." The queen, however, said that she would rather suffer death herself, than consent to so cruel an action, and begged her husband to think of some other remedy. While the king and queen were still thinking on this subject, the queen was told that there was, in a large wood near the town, an old hermit, who lived in a hollow tree, and that he was consulted by people far and near. She said, "I must go then and consult him also, as the fairies have told me the evil, but they have forgotten to tell me the remedy." So the next morning she rose early, mounted a pretty little white mule, whose shoes were of gold, and left the palace accompanied by two of her young ladies, who each rode on a nice horse also. When they were near the wood, the queen and her young ladies alighted, and sought the tree where the hermit lived. He did not like to see women, but when he perceived that it was the queen, he said to her, "You are welcome. What do you want with me?" She told him what the fairies had said of Rosette and asked his advice. He directed her to shut the princess in a tower, and never allow her to leave it. The queen thanked him, rewarded him liberally, and went back to tell the king. The king, having heard this, caused a large tower to be erected, and when it was finished, confined his daughter therein, but that she might not be lonely, he, the queen and the two young princes visited her every day. The eldest was called the Prince Royal and the youngest Prince Orlando. They both loved their sister passionately, for she was the fairest and the sweetest tempered girl that was ever seen. Her slightest glance was worth more than 100 crowns. When she was 15 years old, the Prince Royal said to the king, "Surely, father, my sister is old enough to be married, shall we not soon celebrate her wedding?" Prince Orlando put the same question to the queen, but their majesties amused them, without replying directly on the subject of the marriage. At last the king and queen were taken very ill, and died, nearly about the same day. Everybody was very sorrowful, and went into mourning. The bells were also tolled throughout the kingdom. Rosetta was inconsolable at the death of her kind mamma. When the king and queen were buried, the noblemen of the kingdom placed the Prince of Hell on a golden throne, set with diamonds, put a handsome crown on his head, dressed him in violet-colored velvet clothes, spangled with suns and moons, and then all the court cried 3 times, "Long live the king!" Nothing was thought of but rejoicing. The king and the prince said to one another, "Now that we are the masters, we may surely liberate our sister from the tower where she has been so long, and so melancholy." To reach the tower they had only to cross the garden, in a corner of which it was built, very high indeed, for the deceased king and queen had intended her to reside there all her life. Rosetta was embroidering a fine gown on a frame which stood before her, but, when she saw her brothers, she rose, and, taking the king's hand, said, "Good morrow, sire, now that you are king, and I am your little servant, I entreat you to remove me from this tower, where I am very, very solitary." She then began to cry. The king embraced her, and told her to dry her tears, for he had come to take her to a fine castle. The prince, who had his pockets full of sweetmeats, gave them to Rosetta and said to her, "Come, let us quit this ugly tower, the king will soon find a husband for you, so do not afflict yourself." When Rosetta saw the nice garden, full of flowers, fruits and fountains, she was so surprised that she could not say a word, for she had, till then, never seen anything of the kind. She looked all round, walked a little way, stopped, and then gathered fruit from the trees, and flowers from the parterre. Her little dog, Fretillon, who was green like a parrot, had only one ear, and who danced to admiration, ran before her, barking "Boy, wow, wow," with 1,000 leaps and capers. Fretillon very much amused the company, but all at once he ran into a little wood. The princess followed him, and never was anyone more surprised than she was, at seeing in this wood a large peacock, which, with its tail spread out, appeared to her so beautiful that she could not take her eyes off it. The king and the prince, who soon came up with her, asked her at what she was so much amazed. She showed them the peacock, and asked them what it was. They told her that it was a bird, of a kind that was sometimes eaten. "What?" said she, "do they ever kill and eat so beautiful a bird? I declare to you that I will marry no one but the king of the peacocks, I shall then be queen, and I will take care that no peacocks are eaten." It would be impossible to express the king's astonishment. "But, sister," said he to her, "where shall we find the king of the peacocks?" "Wherever you please, sire," said she, "but I will marry no one but him." After she had taken this resolution, the 2 princes took her to their castle, where they were obliged to take the peacock also, and put it in her room, for she was very fond of it. All the ladies who had not seen Rosetta, hastened to seek an introduction, to pay their court to her. Some brought her sweetmeats, some sugar plums, others rich gowns, fine ribbons, dolls, embroidered shoes, pearls and diamonds. She was feasted everywhere, and she was so well behaved and civil, kissing her hand and curtsying whenever anything was given her, that there was no one but was pleased with her. While she was discoursing with her company, The king and the prince were considering how they should find the king of the peacocks, if there were one in the world. They came to the determination of having a portrait taken of the Princess Rosetta, and they had it done so beautifully that it only wanted speech. They then said to the princess, "Since you will only marry the king of the peacocks, we are about to seek him for you, all over the earth. We shall be very glad to find him, and you must take care of our kingdom during our absence." Rosetta thanked them for the pains they were taking, told them that she would govern the kingdom well, and that while they were gone her only pleasures would be looking at the beautiful peacock, and seeing Fretillon dance. They could not help crying when they bade one another adieu. Behold the two young princes on their journey, asking everyone they meet, "Pray, do you know the king of the peacocks?" They were always answered, "No, gentlemen, no." They still kept going forward, till at last they got so far, that no one had ever been so far before. They presently arrived at the kingdom of the mayflies. There is no longer such a place to be seen. The mayflies made Siak a loud humming, that the king was afraid he should lose his hearing. He asked the one who appeared to him to be the most intelligent looking among them, whether he knew where the king of the peacocks was to be found. "Sire," said the mayfly, "his kingdom is 90,000 miles from here. You have taken the longest road to reach it." "How do you know that?" said the king. "Because," said the mayfly, "we go every year to pass 2 or 3 months in their gardens." Then the king and his brother embraced the mayfly again and again. They became very friendly, and dined together. The princes examined with admiration all the curiosities of their country, where the smallest leaf was worth $1. They afterwards departed to finish their journey, and as they now knew the road, were not long before they completed it. They observed that all the trees were loaded with peacocks. The place was so full of them, that their voices might be heard 6 miles off. The king said to his brother, "If the king of the peacocks is a peacock himself, how will our sister be able to marry him? We should be foolish to consent to the match. What a splendid alliance would she form for us, little peacocks for nephews and nieces!" The prince was equally grieved. "It is an unfortunate fancy that occupies her mind," said he. "I cannot think where she learned that there was a king of the peacocks."